here, getting a push from Elliott Sadler. That's where it's all going to start, as he tried to make a move.
You got a guy coming to you. Not over. Keep digging.
They're crashing. Roads into crashing.
These are the most insane last lap crashes we've ever seen on a NASCAR track. Have you ever wanted something so bad, and when you were within reach of having it, it vanishes into thin air? How would you explain what you felt afterwards? Heartbreak? Depression? It goes on. Here are some of the most disappointing last lap crashes ever witnessed on the NASCAR track. This was a fiery multiple car wreck in 2021 Daytona 500. On the final lap of the 2021 NASCAR Daytona 500, a fiery accident took out several cars and gave Michael McDowell the victory. After a last lap crash knocked the leading cars out of contention, the event ended in a massive fireball, but incredibly, all the drivers walked away unscathed. To move up to first place in the final lap, Brad Keselowski tried to pass his teammate Joey Logano, but instead hit the back of Logano's car, causing a massive accident that took out a number of competitors. Debris littered the track, and it appears that both Keselowski and Logano were not the only drivers to survive the impact. The Talladega Demons are at it again. Here is how this last lap chaos went down in Talladega. A loss of control near the front of the pack caused a 25-car pileup on the final lap at Talladega, and only a few drivers were able to escape. Stewart Tony was leading going into Turn 3 when all hell broke loose, and the only cars to survive the crash were winner Matt Kenseth, Jeff Gordon, Kyle Busch, and Denny Hamlin. Tony Stewart's car was also involved, along with Waltrip, Michael Harvick, Kevin Casey Mears, Sam Hornish Jr., Amarola, Eric Ambrose, Marcos Menard, Paul Jr., Dale Earnhardt, Clint Kane, Casey Smith, Regan Labonte, Bobby Regan, David Blaney, Dave Gilliland, Martin Truex Jr., Terry Labonte, Travis Burton, Jeff Keselowski. This has to be one of the most heart-wrenching moments in NASCAR history. This legend not only crashed out of the race the final hurdle, he sadly lost his life. God rest his soul. Earnhardt was involved in a crash in Turn 4, the final turn of the final lap, when he made light contact with Marlin and slid off course. When Earnhardt attempted to regain control and return to the track, he crossed in front of Schrader, colliding with him and dragging his car up the track. Earnhardt collided with the retaining wall at a critical angle while traveling between 155 and 160 miles per hour, breaking the right rear wheel assembly off the car. His hood pins were severed on impact, causing his hood to open and slam up against the windshield several times. Both wrecked cars went down the steep banking and slid into the infield grass near the exit of Turn 4 as Michael Waltrip and Dale Earnhardt Jr. were about to finish the race. All of the other drivers were able to pass them without incident. Schrader climbed out of his car with minor injuries and went to check on Earnhardt after both cars came to a stop on the infield. Earnhardt's window net was still up, so Schrader removed it himself before frantically signaling for paramedics who had just arrived at the crash site. This is Ryan Newman's last lap crash in 2020 Daytona. Ryan Newman, who had a terrifying crash on the final lap. With a push from Blaney in the final lap, Newman passed Hamlin, but Hamlin roared back around the final turn. He nudged Blaney, who then hit Newman in the bumper, sending his car into the wall and then flying into the air. A last lap crash at the rain-shortened Coke Zero 400 on Sunday night sent Austin Dillon's car airborne and ripped apart a Daytona International Speedway catch fence, injuring 5 fans. Following contact between Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick on the final lap, Jeff Gordon drove into the back of Dillon's car, lifting it over several lanes of traffic and into the catch fence near Turn 1. Brad Keselowski hit Dillon's car again as it rested on the track on its roof, with its engine on another part of the track. The car ripped through the section of fencing, scattering debris into the grandstands, and crew members from multiple teams raced to check on Dillon. Myatt Snyder's Daytona last lap crash. Snyder's number 31 Chevrolet collided with the outside wall on the final lap of the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300, the Xfinity Series inaugural race. Snyder was involved in a crash on the backstretch as drivers jostled for position and collided with the outside wall. His car was hit by another car as it hit the wall, and the rear flipped into the air. This threw his car into the catch fence above the wall, and the cables sheared off parts of Snyder's car. As Austin Hill surged to the front of the pack to win the race, the back half of his car was completely ripped apart. Myatt Snyder's car engine and rear axle were ripped out. After being ripped from the car, Snyder's engine skidded across the track and was hit by Matt Mills' car. Here is Kyle Larson's Daytona 500 crash. Kyle Larson's Chevrolet went airborne and crashed into the front stretch catch fence at Daytona International Speedway after being involved in a crash on the final lap of the Drive for COPD 300. The crash occurred when the leader, Regan Smith, attempted to block a move by Brad Keselowski off turn 4, resulting in the crash. During the 12-car collision, Larson's car tire and engine made it to the grandstand side of the catch fence. Tony avoided the pileup by proceeding down the apron and crossing the finish line under a caution flag. When debris from the wrecked car of young driver Kyle Larson, who was involved in a massive multi-car crash, flew up into the grandstands, it injured a member of spectators, several of whom were seriously injured. Larson's vehicle's engine passed through the steel cables that form the catch fence and landed on the walkway just a few steps from the first row of seats. Various other shrapnel-like fragments continued to ascend into the following rows. Talladega has been a nightmare for most NASCAR drivers. Carl Edwards is no exception to this. He has had his own fair share and a last-lap crash at Talladega. Over the past 2 seasons, the final lap of this race has become ingrained in the minds of NASCAR fans. On the final lap of Talladega's spring race, leader Carl Edwards tries to prevent Brad Keselowski from pulling off a huge upset by winning his first Sprint Cup race in only his 5th career start. Keselowski attempts to make the pass by sneaking under a closing Edwards, accidentally sending the number 99 Ford soaring in the process. On the final lap, Carl Edwards' car flew into the safety fence. Edwards, who climbed out of his crumpled race car and ran across the finish line on foot, had previously railed against the racing style at Talladega and Daytona. Christopher Bell's last lap crash would for so long remain a depressing thought for the NASCAR driver. During the final lap of the Next Era Energy Resource 250, Camping World Truck Series driver Christopher Bell was turned into the wall and barrel rolled roughly 13 times before coming to a stop at the entrance of Turn 1 at Daytona. He climbed out of his truck on his own. The crash involved several other trucks, and Johnny Sauter won the race. He was leading on the final lap when the caution flag flew due to Bell's crash. Kyle Busch has also had a taste of final lap crashes in the Xfinity Series. Busch collided with teammate Eric Jones' car and bounced off into the side of Kyle Larson's car, and then rocketed to the left, hitting the wall at an estimated 90 miles per hour. Busch, 29 years old, climbed out of his smashed car, but was quickly assisted to the grass by a safety team. He stayed for about 10 minutes while medical personnel stabilized Busch. While being treated, Busch was awake and alert, but he appeared to be in obvious pain. Elliott Sadler's last lap tumble at Talladega. Kyle Larson's last lap crash at Talladega 2019. The 4-car wreck began when David Ragan, who claimed the accident was my fault, collided with Byron, setting off a chain reaction that included Jeffrey Earnhardt and Larson. Larson's car slid sideways towards the inside safety barrier of the backstretch after being hit on the right side by William Byron's number 24 Chevy. His right rear tire began to lift off the pavement about 50 feet from the wall. Larson's car was almost perpendicular to the pavement when it collided with the barrier and flipped multiple times.